about a permanent Democratic majority. And one of the key priorities of the Obama administration and Congress was to pass a bill that would put a price on greenhouse gas emissions and carbon pollution.
Which is what you were describing before. And as you say, this would have been a nightmare for Koch's fossil fuel businesses. So the Koch lobbyists targeted Republicans who supported this cap-and-trade bill targeting greenhouse gas emissions. So what were some of the lobbying innovations, so to speak, that the Kochs came up with to as incentives for Republicans to oppose the bill and as threats to Republicans who didn't?
Yes, and when Koch intervenes in this arena, it does it in the same way it trades commodities. It does it over time with patience, making 100 bets, if you will, hoping that it wins 7 out of 10 times. So this is a patient strategy. And Koch's political influence apparatus, I think, is truly unrivaled in corporate America. It's this multifaceted 360-degree machine. First of all, you've got one of the largest registered corporate lobbying shops in the United States, based a block from the White House, which Koch operates. But coupled with that, and I think just as important, is this group called Americans for Prosperity, which is not quite a volunteer organization. It's a boots-on-the-ground organization of paid employees and volunteers. It's an organization that can deliver angry voters from West Virginia, Ohio, Missouri, you name it. Koch, Americans for Prosperity, will load them onto buses, bring them to D.C., give them a box lunch, give them printed placards of protest, and deliver them to the exact legislative offices that Koch's lobbying shop is telling them to pressure.
This group has been called an AstroTurf group because it may look like a grassroots group, but it's really a group it's like fake grassroots. It's being manipulated by larger powers, in this case, the Koch brothers.
Yeah, and I want to be a little careful here. You know, the book talks about the rise of the Tea Party, critically important moment in American history. The Tea Party was a legitimate populist movement of people who were super upset in 2009. What Koch brought to bear was that kind of backroom organization that would take decades for any movement to actually build. And so, yeah, I've been at Americans for Prosperity events where Koch organizes charter buses from around the country. People arrive for a rally at an extremely nice event space near Union Station in Washington, D.C. They're given a box lunch. They're shown around by Americans for Prosperity employees who are kind of like Disney tour guides wearing the Americans for Prosperity windbreaker. And then they're delivered to important offices of Congress. So Koch has truly facilitated popular political movements in order to achieve its own lobbying goals. There's no question about that. And when you look at the history of the Tea Party, for example, Koch didn't create the Tea Party, but it expertly rode that wave, and it helped inject its own concerns into the Tea Party movement. And you saw Tea Party activists who were very upset about Wall Street bailouts and Obama start to get very, very upset about the cap-and-trade bill, or the effort to put a price on carbon.
If you're just joining us, my guest is Christopher Leonard. He's the author of the new book, Kochland, The Secret History of Koch Industries and Corporate Power in America. We'll be right back. This is Fresh Air.
Support for this NPR podcast and the following message come from Curio Collection by Hilton. With all Curio Collection by Hilton hotels, there's something more to discover. Take the foodie-forward resorts of Sai Lagoon in the Maldives and the Higueron Hotel in Spain. Higueron's Michelin-starred chef Diego Gallegos romances palates with multicultural and environmentally friendly dishes. Sai Lagoon takes personalization to a new level by using natural ingredients to create unique plates for each guest. Are you curious? Visit Hilton.com/NPR.
The U.S. has the highest incarceration rate in the world, with 2.3 million people behind bars.
This week on Throughline, How We Got Here, the history of mass incarceration in American culture.
Throughline from NPR, the podcast where we go back in time
to understand the present.
This is Fresh Air, and if you're just joining us, my guest is Christopher Leonard, author of the new book, Kochland, The Secret History of Koch Industries and Corporate Power in America. The book is also about Koch political power in America. So another thing that the Kochs did to kind of create this populist or pseudo-populist movement against cap and trade was to teach volunteers how to call talk radio stations and get on the air, and even mention the websites that listeners should go to learn more. Can you talk a little bit about the echo chamber that Koch created to amplify and spread its political messages?
Absolutely. And, Steve Lonegan, who headed Americans for Prosperity in New Jersey, just gleefully described this stuff to me. I think he believes in what he's doing. He's really proud of what he's doing. He would train folks how to get onto the talk radio station and what to say. And then he would teach folks, you have got to harass these lawmakers around the clock. When that lawmaker gets in the office Monday, they need to have 100 faxes from you, So they would teach these techniques to their employees and to their volunteers. But the technique you just described of the echo chamber is somewhat even larger than that. Washington, D.C., it's a kind of a cliche, but it's a surprisingly small town. It's kind of like this fishbowl of people sharing ideas with one another. And Koch, perhaps better than anybody else, has become an expert at seeding that ground with its own ideas without leaving fingerprints. And here's how it'll do it. The cap and trade fight is very heated. There's a large movement in the United States to curb greenhouse gas emissions. So what Koch Industries does is it privately arranges a study to be done by this group called the American Council for Capital Formation, or ACCF. And Koch asked them to produce a report on global warming, and it paid for it surreptitiously, I would say, using a foundation controlled by the Koch family called the Claude Lamb Foundation, which funnels the money to the think tank to produce the report. Well, the report is produced, and it's extraordinarily negative on economic effects, way out on one end of the spectrum of what a cap and trade bill will do. I mean, they're basically saying we're going to live in this Mad Max hellscape of a world if you pass a cap and trade bill. But that's not the end of it. Once that report is out, Koch uses the other think tanks that it has founded and that it operates, like the Institute for Energy Research, to amplify this message. And then it uses a political think tank group it started called the American Energy Alliance, which takes the study's findings, packages it into these political ads that use the main talking points from the study, and then uses those ads against very targeted legislators.
In addition to the things you've already described that Koch Industries did to kill cap and trade, what incentives or threats did it offer directly to politicians? Because it wanted legislators to vote against cap and trade, against regulating greenhouse gas emissions.
From the earliest days, Charles Koch has made it clear that the focus of his attention is going to be the Republican Party. As he said at a gathering in 2005, the Democrats are lost cause. They're going to do what Democrats do. We need to reshape Republicans and what Republicans believe in. So for decades, the Koch network has been trying to move the Republican Party toward this libertarian, very dramatically anti-government point of view. So, when the cap and trade bill came out in 2009, it enjoyed bipartisan support. John McCain was campaigning on the issue of global warming. And I interviewed one Republican legislator named Bob Inglis, who was as conservative as a lawmaker could be. He was from one of the reddest districts in America in South Carolina, very much a small government, limited budget, Christian kind of lawmaker. Well, when he got to Congress, Bob Inglis sat on the Science Committee, and he started to see some of the actual underlying evidence that global warming was, I hate to use the term real. It's undeniable that we are putting gigatons of carbon into the atmosphere and it makes the Earth warmer. Bob Inglis saw that and felt that it was a massive public policy priority. So he supported efforts to put a price on carbon. Now, he was close with Koch Industries. Koch Industries had donated to his campaign. Koch Industries had given him tours of a Koch facility in his home district. But the moment he started talking about putting a price on carbon, Koch turned against him. And I don't mean they just stopped giving him money. They donated to a competitor named Trey Gowdy. They helped raise up a competitor. They helped facilitate massive Tea Party demonstrations at Bob Inglis's town hall events. You know, Americans for Prosperity would tell people time and place to go to protest Bob Inglis. They made him a villain in his home district. And he was voted out of office because he broke the orthodoxy on climate change. And you saw this across the House and the Senate, that Koch would invest resources in, you'd have to say, effectively punishing any Republican who dared cross that threshold.
So when cap and trade was defeated, did the Koch brothers see that as a great victory for them?
Well, without question. And I mean, I want to point out that within months of the defeat of cap and trade, Koch Industries started making a series of very large investments in crude oil pipelines in South Texas, where the fracking revolution was opening up all these new sources of crude oil. The investment went pouring into that. Koch created a crude oil superhighway in South Texas that went directly to its refinery in Corpus Christi. It took enormous heat off the fossil fuels business, and it was seen as a tremendous victory. And I think it's important to remember in retrospect just how powerful Obama appeared at the time and how powerful the so-called Democratic blue wave appeared. All those dreams of a